It has never been easier to create your own shareable code, whether that's themes, components, hooks, and well, anything really, thanks to Shadcn CLI. Shadcn is no longer just a collection of components, it's an entire system for creating, sharing, and theming them. It's a code distribution platform. I'm starting to see Shadcn all over the place, whether it's for installing hooks, the new Superbase UI, Auth, v0 code, and tons of collections just like Shadcn. So let me show you how you can share your own code with the Shadcn CLI. Here I have 4 components that I want to share, and I also have a block that uses those 4 components. I define the components as the primitives, think of these like the Lego pieces, and a block is like the completed Lego set that uses those pieces. So you can see I have a card primitive, an avatar, a toggle button, and profile info, and then my block that comes together with those 4 components is this YouTube subscribe card with a button that you should definitely be clicking. When you have a few primitives like this, you'd be amazed at all of the things that can actually be composed with these components. That's what Shadcn excels at. To be able to share this with the Shadcn CLI then, we need to create a registry. Now I'll be doing this in a Next.js project, but you can do this pretty much anywhere you want. Step 1 though is to get our files organized. Now this structure is a requirement at the moment, but I believe the next update of Shadcn is actually going to make this less strict, but it's still a nice pattern for organization. What we need is a parent folder called registry. Then under that, you create a folder with the style name. Now in my case, I just went with default, but in other libraries like Shadcn, you see here as a New York style alongside default. It can literally be a folder named anything that you like. Underneath that though is where we place the code that we want to share, and you can add in some organization here as well, like I've got my block code in the blocks folder, and then my components in the UI folder. With our files now organized, we need to tell the CLI what components we want to share and a bit more information about them. To do this, we need a registry.json, and you want to place this at the root of your project like I have here. In here, we want to place in some basic information about our registry, like a name and homepage, and then we have the items array, which is where we'll specify all of the components and code that we want to be installed via our registry. I'll start out by setting up the toggle button that I had. So the first thing we need is an object in that items array, and we give it a name that should be unique to your registry. Then we have a type. Now this can actually be a few values, and you can see on the documentation what each value should essentially mean. Essentially all it's doing though is telling the CLI where this code will be installed when the user actually adds it. In my case, I'm going to be choosing registry UI as this is a primitive component. Next, we add in some metadata like a human readable title and description. And then we have the important bit where we specify a files array to tell it what code we want to share and to be installed with this item. You can actually have multiple pieces of code be installed with one command, which is why this is an array. But in my case, I just need one. And each entry in that array is going to have a path and a type. The path is obviously just where the code is that you want to be installed. In my case, that was in my registry folder, in default, UI, and then togglebutton.tsx. And then the type is using the same logic as this type up here, essentially saying where do you want this to be installed on the user's machine. And for me, again, that's going to be registry UI. Finally, since my toggle button actually uses an external library, in my case React Area Components, I need to list it in this dependencies array here, so when the CLI installs this component, it will also go ahead and install React Area Components if the user doesn't have it set up already. I'll be setting up a block later that will showcase how you can use registry dependencies, aka when one item in your registry relies on another one. But for now, this is all we need for the toggle button, and we're ready to go. All we need to do now is run the shadcn build command, so that's going to be npx shadcn build. Hit enter on that, it will pick up the registry.json. As you can see, it's built the registry. Now, when that command completes, by default, you should get a new folder in your public folder called R, and then inside of that, the JSON files for all of the components that we just set up, which in my case is just the togglebutton.json. Now, you can change the output directory if you need to, if you're not using Next.js, or you have some other setup. Now inside of the JSON file, you can see it looks similar to what we just wrote out. The only difference is it includes this content now, and that is the code of the component that we set up, which the CLI is going to read and then add that to the user's project. So this JSON file is the one that you want to host somewhere, and it will be the URL of the component. Now it doesn't actually matter where you host this, you could literally put this on GitHub if you wanted to, but since I'm in a Next.js project and it's been placed in the public folder, this is already going to be hosted when I deploy my application. As you can see when I run the Next.js dev server here, at localhost 3000/r/togglebutton.json, we're seeing that JSON file that I had earlier. Now all I need to do is copy this URL, go to the project where I actually want to add this component into, and now I can just run npx shadcn add, and then paste in the link to the component that I want to install. Hit enter on that, it will resolve the link. As you can see, installing the dependencies, so it's installed React Area Components for me, and then it's added the toggle button code, and there we go, my code is now distributed with the Shadcn CLI. Now I've gone ahead and added in the other 3 UI components as they all follow a similar pattern. It is super simple to get started with, so much so that Cursor can literally see that first one and then write the rest of them for you. But now let's go ahead and actually add in our subscribe card block. Now this is super simple as well. It's literally the exact same as the others. The only thing I've done differently here is change the type to registry block and obviously pointed it to a different file. But next we actually need to add in the registry dependencies. To do that, all we need to do is add a new array to the object called registry dependencies, and then inside of there, just list them out. Now, one important thing to know is you actually just use the name like avatar, button, and so on. That's actually going to install the Shadcn component. If you want to make sure it's from your registry, you need to use the URL to the JSON that we hosted earlier. So in my case, that will be to the toggle button JSON, like so, and then I'll add on the other 3 components that it also relies on. Now, obviously here I'm using localhost 3000, but you'd switch that out for the public URL of wherever you're hosting this. The final thing I need to do for this block then is just add in the dependencies that the block relies on, and we're good to go. We can run the build command on my registry again, and as you can see, all of the JSON files have been generated. Then in the project where I want to add that block into, all we need to do is run that shadcn add command again with our new JSON file, hit enter, and that will actually install the other components that the block has listed as its dependencies. And there we go, you can see in my project now, I have my components, UI, avatar card, profile info, and then I also have the subscribe card as a block. And there we go, we now know how to set up a registry to distribute our code with the Shadcn CLI. Now as a bonus, you can actually use this registry format to open up your components in v0. It's super simple. All you have to do is create a link that looks like this one here, so v0.dev, and at the end you paste in the URL to the registry file that you're trying to open up in v0. So in my case, I created a reusable component here. Then on one of my pages, I just paste in the link to that registry JSON that we looked at earlier. Obviously this time I've gone ahead and actually hosted this because v0 can't open up my localhost. What this ends up looking like on my website is this open in v0 button here, and if I click that, it will open up a new v0 chat with your component installed, so you can go ahead and iterate on this using AI. That's the basics of Shadcn for code distribution, but there's actually a lot more that can be done. For example, you can add to the registry definition to ensure that custom CSS and variables are installed with your component, or you can just use that to create a distributable theme. That's actually what powers sites like Tweakcn, where you can customize their theme, then install it with the CLI. Let me know how you feel about Shadcn in the comments down below. While you're there, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.